The Force has awakened, and who knows how long before it goes back to sleep, so let's get right to it. Can you beat the entire Star Wars LEGO Force Awakens story, all 12 levels, without dying the whole run? If I do manage to meet the same fate as this poor old guy, then back to the beginning of the game I go to restart the entire game. With the spoiler warning for, I guess, this game and the movie The Force Awakens, let's go collect some studs and break some bricks. We begin our story while the Force still slumbers in one of the greatest opening LEGO levels ever. The Empire may have so much more power, but it doesn't seem to have the sense to move its walkers slightly back or slightly forward. Basically, anywhere other than the spot it's in, when we very obviously set it up to be crushed. Very accommodating of them to stay so still. Less helpful is beating back waves of troopers only to be blown up by another walker at the exact same time that I blow it up. This is why I need the Force to wake up. It's clearly still asleep, and not at all with me. This feels like a new record for dying in a LEGO game. At least it's not a long trip back to the start. This time I'm more careful about peeking my precious LEGO head out of cover, only firing when I'm sure it's perfectly safe. The third walker in my way makes me more ashamed that I ever did die to one, as it's clearly having so much trouble just shooting R2 stuck under a tree. But who can blame it with the sheer awesome plot armor that R2 always has? I bet I can drive these giant chickens better, and I aim to prove it. Yes, yes! Run in fear of my power. Who needs you, you little Ewoks? I'll blow you up too. If only I wasn't such a terrible shot. But who needs to be a good shot when the enemy-controlled walkers just stand there as I shoot at them? These guys really have no survival sense, do they? No wonder they're losing. With the shield generator down, it's time for the grand battle against Palpatine. Good thing it's so easy to get Vader to join me in fighting him. Who knew that 2 decades of mass murder and ultimate betrayal could be overridden by your 23-year-old son giving you a less than stellar drawing he made of you? The complexities of Vader never cease to amaze me. Thankfully, the unlimited power that is Palpatine is really simple to beat by just shooting him with our toys and chucking stuff at him. And then, I'm in space. I may be a sucky pilot, but thankfully, the game doesn't care about that, doing all the flying for me so I can just shoot endlessly. Whatever damage I take is very quickly healed off the hearts of enemy TIE fighters. This makes it super easy to get deep inside the Death Star and begin blowing its shielding away. It's nice to see the same attitude I employ watching movies and shows with others, by constantly checking to see if they're enjoying it, is also used by our co-pilot while destroying a massive battle station. He just wants to make sure Lando's having as much fun ending an era of tyranny as he is. With the Death Star blown up, it's time for a 30-year jump in the actual game to begin. As Poe Dameron, the best pilot of the Resistance, I work with BB-8 to stop the First Order from taking over a village. And by that I mean I attempt to slaughter all the villagers. From a certain point of view, I am protecting them from the First Order. That is, if I don't get distracted by bouncing around on these birds, or playing some soccer. Since it's in space and not North America, is it football? It'll have to remain unanswered as I single-handedly hold off the First Order attack, as they can't seem to grasp the very simple concept of using cover like I can. I then act as a good droid papa and let BB-8 enjoy some time on the swings. Sure, the village is actively burning to the ground, but that won't stop me from being a good dad. I then unleash nature's greatest evolutionary achievement, or as most know it, the crab, upon the First Order and manage to make it to the old man I'm here to save. Only for him to immediately die and me to get captured. Love to see it. But worry not, the trooper in charge of escorting me conveniently turns traitor and joins my side. But who needs his help? You know why I'm handcuffed? 'Cause you're scared of these hands, as you well should be. Poe Dameron doesn't need any blaster to tear you apart. It's very handy that the First Order security is completely based around a dress-up game. Not just a dress-up game, but one where you have to make the image look like a First Order trooper. I don't know what's worse, the security or the fact that it actually works. I really got worried I might die fighting my way out of there, but for some reason, merely staying in cover allowed my health to regenerate. I'm certainly not complaining. Off we flew, one TIE fighter against dozens, plus a plethora of cannon fire as well. But the plot armor is on a whole new level, as I actually managed to disable most of the enemy fire and fly out of there. Well, mostly a whole new level, cause Cutscene Us gets hit and down goes our ship. The ship may not have plot armor, but I still do, having survived. Now stranded back on the planet, Finn the Trooper Traitor, Rey the Scavenger, and our true hero BB-8 fight off First Order troops as we attempt to escape. That is, if I don't get too distracted bouncing on this guy's head. It's here I remember the key to combat in this game. BB-8 is a power beyond all others, and merely charging at any threat, or even your allies, makes for quite the easy combat. Honestly, just mass produce BB-8 and unleash them on the First Order, and the war could be won in a week. That is, if he could be trusted. Die, you mortals! Now that I have these beasts, you no longer serve a purpose. Oh, you're back already. Well then, this is awkward. Let's pretend I didn't just try and crush you into paste. While BB-8 is an incredibly dangerous death ball, he lacks limbs, sadly, which means Finn and Rey are needed for all the building. Doesn't stop him from going mad with power when he takes over a cannon and blows up a multitude of troopers and TIE fighters. It's a true miracle when one of them manages to survive his ship's crash. Oh, never mind. He's dead now. There's no stopping BB-8's wrath. I wish he had taken out more TIEs in his blind rage, because a moment later, while trying to flee, my ship is shot out of the sky by a very annoying TIE fighter. If only BB-8 could fly, this never would have happened. But sadly, it did happen, and so I'm back at the start. And this time, maybe I won't throw Palpatine to his death. Maybe, just maybe, we can work something out, and ensure the Force never needs to awaken. And frankly, who hasn't committed 1 or 2,000 atrocities? But then again, his face is terrifyingly ugly, and I don't know if any piece is worth looking at him again. So the Force awakens once more, and before long, I'm back to where I died. This time I shove myself deep into the corners of the screen, anything to avoid the TIE Fighter's blast, even if it means running into every object. For whatever reason, solid matter doesn't seem to hurt me though, making for surprisingly easy evasion and escape. Now teamed up with Old Man Han Solo and middle-aged Chewbacca to hold off a bunch of criminals, I find it extremely handy that Chewbacca's bowcaster one-shots every enemy. Between him and BB-8, the combat is a cinch, and the only problem is this terrifying beast. Why is every time there's something extremely deadly and unstoppable, it's always a sphere? Every single time. Why is Star Wars trying to give me a phobia of circles? At least I can respond yet again with the ultimate power that is a crab. And it's dead. Well, frick. I suppose explosive crates make for a great alternative at least. The next level has the potential to be deadly, being it starts with spraying a hulking alien with water to wake him, but he just goes inside to cuddle his goth girlfriend. I mean, who can blame him? After that, I just trashed the place for a bit, and other than a few angry droids in the basement, there's no threat to be found this level. Who needs that? Bring on the danger! Yeah, now we're talking. A good old-fashioned First Order raid. I have a lightsaber, which is a poor alternative to BB-8's deadliness, but it will have to do. Doesn't seem fair that the closest I get to death here is because the game lets me take damage even when I don't have control of my character in a cutscene, and puts me a nice distance from cover when I do have control again. Starting to think the Force is cheating to get me killed. It's a good thing these troopers are such a bad shot, because I'm not sure how effective this cover really is with Chewie's big head poking out the whole time. Somehow, I still managed to knock its shot and slowly recover my health as I push forward all the way to a boss fight. Haha, you can't touch me, you can't touch me. No really, man, you can't seem to touch me. I think this is why most of your buds are using ranged weapons, because the whole melee approach really isn't working for you. Surprising no one, he falls with ease, and I found myself Palpatine yet again. But hey, I'm Poe Dameron. This is the same guy who's both Moon Knight and Miguel O'Hara as well. He's also the only guy that BB-8 listens to, so clearly, the First Order's doomed against him. But while he's kicking butt, Rey has gotten captured, so off we go to rescue her. Only thing is, I first need to spend my hard-earned stunts to buy the always iconic Trento Duaba. And I can't forget Mino Teast. Such classic characters after all. Where would Star Wars be without them? Okay, now if you thought the trip to the castle was too easy with only a few angry droids, prepare for the greatest level to exist in LEGO history. I spent half the level opening this giant door, and the other half collecting supplies for the Resistance. There's literally not a single threat, except the Taco Bell I've adjusted, possibly killing me in real life. Worth it though if so. Little disheartening that Nine Numb, great hero of the rebellion, refuses to help us pack for the trip unless he's given some ice cream. But heck, what's dooming all of us to endless tyranny and a galaxy-destroying superweapon when compared to not getting some tasty ice cream? More than fair. With the world's easiest level complete, I'm off to Starkiller Base to blow up yet another massive spear in the name of freedom. Sadly, no BB-8 here, but Chewie is more than capable of wiping out the First Order defense. Nice to see he hasn't lost his touch, but I can't say the same for Han. Han, please, 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 please move away from the fire. Listen, I know our odds aren't looking too great, but this isn't how we should handle it. Hey, I promise if you come out of the fire, everything will work out fine, and we'll all escape safely. Frick. Well, I was mostly right. Up until then, things were going so smoothly. Their captain went down with ease, and Rey managed to mind trick a stormtrooper into massacring his fellow soldiers, which has to be a war crime, but that just means she might be worthy of the Skywalker name yet. You really can't blame my confidence when just a moment before I chose to go for an idyllic race while in the middle of a dogfight and managed to survive. And hey, as it turns out, I don't have to mourn Han for long when I go ahead and join him in death a second later. That was basically the last level of the game, and I managed to get blown up immediately. Perfect. The shenanigan guarantee never fails. Beginning again, I fly through the game as fast as I can, barely even taking the time to murder innocent civilians along the way. It would have been faster if the game didn't choose to go into endless loading mode right after I beat the little melee boss here. You would think it would deposit me back in the game right before the boss fight, but nope, restart the whole level instead. That's just about my luck. Thankfully, this is undoubtedly the easiest LEGO game I've ever played. Two of the levels have practically zero threats, BB-8 wipes out most problems, and Chewbacca wipes out the rest. And while flying is always rather dangerous, endless firing keeps me alive through the worst of it. Helps that these troopers are so terrible at shooting that they miss even when I stay perfectly still for them. Come on, buddy. For all our sakes, please, hit me. I feel bad at this point for you guys. It's a mercy of mine to blow the whole base up, I'd say, and this time, it actually works out. This is still the hardest part of the game for sure with the amount of fire coming my way, but I'm able to avoid it while constantly healing up on the hearts of my foes just long enough to blow the base up and escape. Well, Poe escapes anyways. Finn and Rey are still stuck here for the mandatory final boss fight against Kylo Ren. Despite his years of experience and natural talents in the Force, and the fact that Finn first held a lightsaber literally yesterday, I win regardless, simply because I never, ever stop pressing X. As long as I keep swinging, Kylo's grand powers just can't compare. Who needs experience or talent when you have the power to button mash as fast as possible? And yeah, honestly, that was the whole fight, over and over. Poor Kylo's gonna need 2 more movies to get over that loss. Time to go back home for a party, and then one last level in the form of an epilogue, which just means a lot of platforming, which is honestly more terrifying to me than the entire First Order Armada, being I'm very clumsy, and with my luck, would absolutely die here. But my paranoia gives me the sense to survive long enough to abandon Chewie, because I guess, who needs him? He doesn't get to come say hello to one of his oldest friends ever. And I say hello to Luke Skywalker, officially beating the game. Huzzah! After 3 deaths, which can all be chalked up to pure stupidity, I've beaten LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens after 9 hours, 25 minutes total, and 3 hours, 32 minutes for my final run. Despite being filled with combat, this felt like the easiest LEGO game I've ever played, and honestly, I'm a bit ashamed I managed to die as much as I did. Shenanigan guarantee though, right? I may not be the biggest fan of the sequels, but I do like this game nonetheless, because LEGO always makes everything better after all. And now, I'm off to commit war crimes as the galaxy's greatest villain. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the adventure. Now off to sleep with you, regardless of what time you watch this, or even if you just woke up, it's time for you and the Force to go back to bed. Sleep tight and have an amazing rest. See you later, friends.